Hey everyone, welcome to this week's podcast episode. Last week we mentioned we were going to be breaking down some of the overarching themes of parent pain points and why they're looking at alternative education solutions. And so today we're going to talk about why parents are choosing to homeschool. And when we say homeschool, that encompasses kind of a hybrid learning model where maybe parents are teaching some of the course material, but then in conjunction taking online courses for the core subjects like English, math, science, maybe some of those subjects that parents might not feel as equipped to teach. And so the power of this hybrid model in a homeschool environment and why more and more families are choosing that. So when we talk homeschool, that is also including an online learning model where it's supplementing maybe some of those hands-on activities where kids are getting some experiential learning as well. So we, again, as we mentioned on the last episode, we had our team kind of dive into, hey, why are parents choosing to go this homeschool route? Why are they looking at this alternative education option? And so we found some really good articles from like Tutor Zone and Think Impact. They were some of the top sources we found that showed kind of some of the reasons why parents are opting to homeschool their children or find alternative, education solutions for their children. So let's dive in and talk about some of those reasons.
Mm-hmm. One of the big things that comes up over and over and over when we talk about these things is the individualized approach to education. So that's probably one of the things that comes up the most when we talk to parents, when we do research. Parents are looking for an individualized education for their student. Something that traditional schooling can't always provide. So it's one of the biggest things. When you homeschool, it's completely individualized. It's geared toward your student, 100%. There are no other students in the classroom unless you have multiple children, probably at different age levels, unless you're like me and have twins or other multiples, right? But alternatives to education, whether it's homeschooling, fully online, some kind of hybrid like you talked about, it is catered to the needs of your student. You're not competing with other students in a classroom. It's all about you and your needs, which is awesome.
Yes. And I think along those same lines, this individualized approach especially is helpful for students who maybe have a disability, right? So having that kind of control to have this alternative option can help support that disability. Whereas maybe in a classroom, it might be a little bit harder to do because again, they're in a classroom of maybe, 10 to 15 other students with the same needs, and maybe they might not get the attention that they need. So I think that's another big reason for parents to choose this option, because then they can be there to support their student through that with the individualized education route and helping them get the support that they need, right?
Mm-hmm.
And also I think kind of along those same lines, so these are kind of like subcategories of the same thing where really it's about that flexibility, right? And that's kind of one of the overarching themes that we talked about last week, was that parents just really like the flexibility. And we live in a day and age where there's a lot of students who they have a lot of activities that they're involved in. They have a busy schedule. They have a unique schedule. Kids that I know from my neighborhood are participating in, their mountain bike club, and then they have, music lessons and sports teams that they're playing on. Like there's so many activities that kids are involved in, or they're involved in FFA, starting their own businesses, competing for Miss Utah. Like there's so many different extracurricular activities that these kids are doing. And so this option with the flexibility gives them the opportunity to take advantage of those opportunities, whereas they might not be able to as much if they were, locked down in them.
Yeah, a lot of libraries are doing homeschool events. I know some of ours local here are in Wisconsin, and I'm sure Utah has a lot of that as well. But as there is a shift to more students being homeschooled or schooled at home, whether it's online or traditional homeschool, there are opportunities to continue connecting with people and just finding what you love, finding out about your passions. Libraries are a great place to go and just explore your own interests. And in traditional school, you're pretty much locked into your schedule. You choose your classes at the beginning of the semester, and most of them are chosen for you.
Yeah.
You might have a few options for electives, but it's somewhat limited. So not every school has, for example, an equine program where if you love horses, right, you want to just get in there, find a find a place to volunteer or just work with horses, train horses. You can't really do something like that at school, right? That's not usually an elective that's there for you. Gardening, some schools might have it, but what is better than actually getting out in your yard and planting a garden during the day and watching it grow and stuff like that, right? So that's kind of the beauty of shifting to a more individualized approach is you choose what you want to learn, right? You have your core subjects and keeping up with the standards of the state that you live in, but there is just so much more to learning and exploring your passions. And I think that's such a great reason why families are looking for alternatives, because they recognize that and they view those things as being important, not just skills in math and reading and, social studies, science, stuff like that, right? You can actually just explore the things that you love. So definitely a theme that comes up over and over again for good reason.
Yes, for sure. And then we kind of touched on this last time as well, as one of the overarching concerns of, traditional schooling is that you want to get your child away from a negative school environment, whether that's bullying or, some of the other issues that are going on in traditional schools, that they want to be able to provide kind of a safer, more positive environment for their kids. And what better way to do that than at home, right? Oh, hey, mom can check in on you, see how you're doing, but your online teacher can help with the logistics and making sure you're staying on track. And then we can have those conversations and provide a safe environment, for your student, instead of worrying about, hey, if I go to school, so and so is going to punch me in the face today, or I'm going to get tripped or shoved into a locker, or, whatever is happening. It just gives an opportunity for that student to have a safer environment in their own home, versus being subjected to that at the school. So that's
Mhm.
another, I think, theme that comes up a lot for parents.
Oh yeah. And it doesn't matter what school you're at, you're always going to have that. So even in great neighborhoods, right, with great school districts, um, you can't escape negativity no matter where you are. But don't assume that just because you're in a great district that you're going to escape all problems, right? There's always going to be issues with students, some level of bullying that, happens almost at every single school that you could go to. Um, Many parents that I know in my circles, have students that are dealing with that now. It's just an issue that is so prevalent, and some schools do a better job of kind of nipping it in the bud and attending to it right away and trying to prevent it from growing into a huge problem. But man, that's a hard thing to escape. So being at home and providing that positive environment where you have more control over it is definitely appealing to some families. Um, we talked about this before, but just adjusting to a student's busy and unique schedule. I think that's an interesting one because of all of the different activities now that are available. When we were growing up, might have had like sports practice right after school, or minimal activities, but it just seems like kids are getting so much more involved in things now, and this crazy hectic lifestyle that we've all grown accustomed to, where it's bouncing from one thing to the next, right? Like your schedule is full. You're doing band practice, then it's basketball or tennis, and then drama club, and like how many things can we pack into a day, right? That seems to be kind of the MO of a lot of families. And it makes it a little bit more difficult to do when 8 hours of the day are spent in school, right? It doesn't cater to a student's unique schedule. We've had students in the past that have been actors or actresses, or high-level athletes, right? Dancers, attending dance competitions all the time. And for students that really want to pursue some of these passions and do it at a high level, the traditional school route doesn't always cater to that in the best way, because if you have to leave, go out of town for a competition, right, you're having to take off school or come home with packets or something like that that your teacher assigns. Super difficult to manage. If you're already in a flexible situation, doing school from home, online or otherwise, you control your schedule. You can pack up and leave anytime you want to. So if you have competitions, sporting events, stuff like that, it's not an issue. School goes around your schedule.
Yeah. Which to me is so funny, because I look back on my school years and I think, wow, did I just do nothing as a kid? But like nowadays, kids are so involved and have so many different opportunities that maybe you just weren't present when I was, a kid growing up. Because I look and think, wow, I participated in sports, I did clubs, I did things like that, but never was it the level of commitment that a lot of the students nowadays have, where it's taking up hours and hours. You're done with school, you go to dance till it's dinner time, you eat dinner, you do your homework, and then you go to bed, and you don't have any time for anything else. And so I think that's kind of also shifting this narrative of why that's kind of an important aspect of this, and why parents want that flexibility and the option of alternative routes to education, which is pretty cool.
To give yourself a little bit of downtime, right? I mean, if you're going from one thing to the next, and you have little control over the schedule during the day, right? The evenings can get pretty jam-packed, or your weekends, right? You're trying to fit everything in during the weeknights or on the weekends if you're involved in activities. If you go with an alternative to traditional schooling, you don't have to try to pack everything during that time, right? You can do stuff during the day. It's funny when you see homeschool students out during the day and people question like, oh, no school today? Like, nope, I just do it in a different way, right? Like I'm still doing school, but I'm just not having to be in a building during the day for 8 hours. So, and I think we'll see more and more of that too. There's a shift. I think people are starting to be more receptive to it in general, but it is funny when you see school age kids out and about during the week and people still wonder what's going on. Why aren't they in school? They are. They just don't have to follow that schedule.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I mean, I'm sure there's more and multiple reasons why, parents are choosing to homeschool, but I wanted to kind of dive into some of the statistics that Think Impact, an article they have just called Homeschooling Statistics, outlines to kind of show and illustrate how homeschooling and traditional or non-traditional education is evolving. And so, and kind of speaking to the point we just talked about. So 98% of the home educated students engage in an average of 5 activities outside their homes. That's a lot, right? And back to your point of, hey, I'm doing school just in a different way, right? Maybe those activities are, hey, I have a job and I'm learning how to count change and, balance books and interact with customers, and I'm learning all these life skills. That could be one of the activities they're participating in. And there's just as much value in that type of learning as there is in being in a traditional classroom and, taking a financial literacy course. This is kind of a hands-on way of doing that versus just absorbing it in a classroom. And so 98%, that's a big percentage. And I'm sure that's a lot of why those kids in particular are doing home-based education, because it caters to those activities and those interests and things for them to get outside and explore outside of a classroom.
Right. I think there's a misconception when you think of homeschool is that like you're just holed up in your house all day long and you never see the light of day and you have no social interaction. And, that really is dependent upon the family, whoever's facilitating that at home. So if that particular family decides that's how they want to approach homeschooling, I suppose then yes, you would have very little social interaction and be involved in very few things, right? But
Mhm.
the beauty of being able to homeschool or have, like do online schooling, such as something that like what we do at Mountain Point Academy or some type of hybrid, is it affords you the opportunity to get out of the house and do
Mhm.
those activities. So that's where I think the magic happens is not falling into that trap where you get too comfortable at home, but you're using that extra time during your day to get out and experience things.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. And it's kind of interesting as we look at these stats too, that, I think a big argument against homeschooling has been, well, how can you ensure that your student is learning the things they need to learn? How do you know they're going to be successful if they are not, traditionally taught in a classroom? And some of these statistics are kind of mind blowing. And it makes me think of, I don't know if any of you have read the book Educated by Tara Westover, but it was kind of her experience of she was homeschooled and then decided, I want to go to school, I want to go to college. And she took the test, aced it, got into college, graduated. Like, it was just such an interesting story of like this kind of hands-off approach to education. And yet she excelled at it. And it kind of put that stigma of, well, you're not learning anything in homeschooling kind of into perspective. So it was a very interesting read. But some of these, statistics, again, from Think Impact, this article they had, basically it said that peer-reviewed studies indicate that 69% of homeschooled students succeed in college and adulthood. And not only that, they tend to perform above average on their ACTs and SATs, which is crazy, right? Because we think, oh, hey, you're going to be in this classroom, you're learning all these things. But basically at home based education students averaged between 15% and 30% more points than the students attending public schools, which is kind of interesting. That's kind of a big jump, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
a big jump.
You're
So
right.
it's interesting to see how is, this home-based education actually impacting students? Because I think for so long, the stigma in the United States especially has been, well, you're weird if you're homeschooled, or you're not learning as enough or learning enough if you're homeschooled, and all these kind of judgments. But really the statistics are showing otherwise, which is pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. I mean, just looking at the ACTs, right, is average 72 points more than the nationwide mean. 72 points more, right, on SATs.
Yeah.
Average performance of homeschoolers is 22.8 out of 36 points compared to national average of 21 ACT, right? So, oof,
Yeah. So
those are
1 point.
interesting numbers.
Yeah. And also a graduation rate of 67% compared to 57.5% from public schools. So that's a 10% increase. And also, wow, why is the graduation rate from public schools only 57.5%?
Right.
That's wow, that's kind of alarming. How many kids are just dropping out of school either because they aren't getting the support they need, or they're not understanding the concepts, or other mitigating circumstances? But that seems like a fairly high number of dropouts from public schools compared to, hey, if I was at a home-based education program, I have a 10% better chance at succeeding and graduating from high school. To me, that is kind of alarming.
Fascinating. Yeah,
Because,
truly.
yeah, we've grown up in a society where public education is the way to go. It's the best way to be successful. But hey, is it? There's some of these alternative routes to education that are maybe a little more promising because they cater to the individual student. They don't just cater to the masses. And so I think COVID has really shed a light on a lot of these opportunities. And in fact, one of the next episodes that we're going to talk about is about kind of this concept of, how COVID kind of became this emergency remote learning program because teachers were scrambling to put everything and digitize it. Whereas online learning platforms already had it figured out, right? And so there's this opportunity to really capitalize on some of those existing programs that have been around and understand how online education works and can make it be effective for students, especially if they are at risk in a traditional school system, to just give them that better opportunity at a home-based route.
Right. Yeah. Here's an interesting one. I'm looking at these stats and I'm finding them so fascinating. 25% of homeschooled students have enrolled a grade above their recommended grade as per age level. So, and we've seen that here at Mountain Point Academy, a student coming in as a 10th grader and graduating within a year and a half, right? Like just kind of blowing through the curriculum and doing well because they can move at their own pace. There's nothing holding them back. So that one's not surprising to me at all, that 25% would have enrolled a grade above their recommended grade level.
Yeah, so it's super interesting. And we'll link this article from both Think Impact as well as Tutor Zone that kind of cites these top reasons why parents are opting to homeschool their children, as well as some of these homeschooling statistics, so that if you are one of those parents that's kind of on the fence or deciding if a home-based education system is what's going to work best for your student, then these articles have some kind of enlightening information in them that can help you just make that decision. So yeah, we'll link those in the show notes. And if you are one of those parents too that you're wondering, well, hey, how could online education help with this hybrid learning model for my student, where I have them doing hands-on activities and we're out exploring and getting some of this, but I don't want to teach math, I don't want to teach English, give us a call. We have free 15-minute phone consultations that you can set up to talk with one of our staff, just to see what the program's about, how it could help your student, and see if it's a good fit for you. Because online learning, is a great option. It opens up a world of opportunities, but sometimes it maybe isn't the right fit for your family. So if you are on the fence or have questions about it, what it looks like, how it works, please sign up for a consultation. We're happy to talk with you, answer any of those questions that you have, because I'm sure, especially as we're continuing to evolve, more and more questions come up. So we're happy to just have that discussion with you. And again, I'll put that link in the show notes so that you can set up your own free consultation call, and we're happy to dissect that with you and answer any questions that you have. Sarah, anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think this was a great conversation, eye-opening for me, looking at some of these stats. Surprised by some, not surprised by others.
Yeah.
So I really do think that this is the wave of the future. More and more families are shifting to alternatives, and hopefully this conversation helps you understand that it is a great solution and it's possible. So you can make it work. We've had working parents that have made it work. It doesn't necessarily mean that the only people who can do this are families that have a stay-at-home mom or stay-at-home parent, right? It can be flexible, and it can be something that works for many students. So give us a call, talk to us. We'll help you decide if it's the right fit. And yeah, we're just happy that you're here tuning into us and listening to these conversations we're having about differences in traditional education and alternatives.